Good morning and welcome to Valley Views. I'm your host, Glenn Edison. We're certainly glad to have you today. And as always, we're thankful to BTC Fiber for hosting our program. And you can see this interview on BTC Fiber's YouTube page as well as cable channel 18. Normally, we try to promote all the good things that are going on in our county, but today we're going to address a few things that need to be addressed, and not necessarily that they're good things, but we have with us three people that can address these things. Superintendent Sarai Pierce, of course Sheriff Bill Phillips, and Chief of Police Randy Phillips. Thank y'all for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Ms. Sarai, we're going to go ahead and start with you. I know as a former teacher, I know things have changed over time.
Sir.
You know, now I won't say the discipline's gotten any easier.
No, sir.
And so why don't you start with some things that concern you, and then we'll just go down the line.
Well, I'd like to start with something positive if we can.
Okay.
Just the fact that we can work so well with our law enforcement, it's a real comfort, and I'm so thankful. These gentlemen and their teams show up for us every time we need them, and that's I really appreciate that. You're talking about challenges and discipline in the school, and just in my 25 years, the changes that I've seen, sometimes things seem seemingly innocent. You know, they're on their devices, and you don't recognize how the dark roads that they can go down. And drug use, particularly, I mean, even the students tell me what pressure they're under. And you all have heard our messages from the school board recently. Vape use has increased on campus. And so we're trying to hit that in two different ways. First of all, preventative measures, bringing some awareness into the schools, educating our students about the potential dangers. We want them to not do it at all,
Right.
certainly while they're at school. And then we tightened up on our discipline, frankly, to make it clear that while you're on campus, this is not allowed, and it won't be tolerated. Our number one message is to keep kids safe, and this is one way to do that. You know, if I could tell the community anything, is that teachers went into the job to educate children, and we want to be able to do that. And for us to be successful at educating your kids is we need parents to be parents. We need them to set standards and train their children in the home. I think that's where greatness starts, is in the house.
Well, I know all three of you personally, and I know you would rather just have school than to discipline. And I know these guys would rather just really sit in the office and not have to worry about arresting anybody. And I mean, you know, but that's not the case. And you know, we have to get out and do things that you don't always want to do, but just things you have to do. And you know, discipline is things, as you mentioned, the vaping, even if they weren't using drugs in their vapes, because I know that's a thing now, to put other things other than vape in their vape machines. You know, vaping works on the lungs, and it coats the lungs, and it's not good. It's just
And the fact is, it's still illegal for them because they're minors,
right.
right?
That's right. That's true.
And I guess they try to. Students have always, all through time, have tried to get around the rules and try to do things, and you know, I guess that's part of being a student. But today there's some more seriousness to it, and maybe Bill and Randy, maybe y'all can talk about the things of, you know, I know things are innocent, like people will try to put candy and things, but they'll have the fentanyl and all the other things in it that causes a lot of death and other things.
Yeah, I think, you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, one really big issue has been fentanyl mixed into many other things. And now we're even beginning to see where there are even more potent drugs mixed into the fentanyl.
Oh.
So, which is very, very scary. There's one that's just on the rise now that is a real concern for the DEA. You know, I talked to some folks at our local ER earlier this week, and there's a concern with patients that are coming in from both Sequatchie and Bledsoe counties who are in really bad shape, and the only thing they're testing positive for is marijuana. So is it laced marijuana they're coming in with, or is it the fact that these tests don't test for fentanyl, which we know that they have to do a special test for that. And if that's the case, these patients are not responding to Narcan, so that would lead you to believe that, well, it's probably not a fentanyl overdose, because normally the Narcan will do its reversal thing with a fentanyl. However, now fentanyl is being laced with another drug that Narcan will not reverse, which is a tranquilizer used by veterinarians. And
Really? Wow.
so I read an article, the article just came out a couple of days ago, and the DEA has found this new drug, or it's not a new drug, but it's new to this arena, in 23% of the fentanyl seizures that they have made, the powder seizures, and then 7% of the fentanyl pill seizures. So, we work to address the fentanyl crisis is just that. I mean, it's an amazing crisis. And then now we're looking at this, making it even worse.
Wow. That's terrible.
Just to throw out a few stats to you, Glenn, on fentanyl use. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin, and it's 100 times stronger than morphine. And what we're seeing come across the country is carfentanil, which Sarai was with me, I was with Sarai in a meeting where a guy from Life Force was talking to us about it. It's 10,000 times more potent than fentanyl.
Wow.
And we're talking about that, and because of that meeting, we have scheduled a training, and we've communicated to families. On April 5th, we're actually going to have an early dismissal for students, and every school employee, and I believe law enforcement's going to join us as well.
Right.
But Mr. Stacy Prater's going to come make a 90-minute presentation to our staff members. It's so unfortunate that these are the days, instead of just being trained on how to use your curriculum to teach kids, is we have to learn about this. And if we're going to know about it, then we have to be trained ourselves just for an awareness. So we're going to all experience that together and try to learn because we want to keep our kids safe, And it's certainly hard to educate children if they're under the influence.
Right.
It's concerning for our whole town.
It is. It's a huge issue.
Well, and of course, the law enforcement, they're more used to the signs and knowing what's going on, as opposed to maybe the regular classroom teacher who may not know any of the signs, because they're just, like you said, they're not educated on that.
And education is key. That's we're not going to, we can keep these doors in and make all these busts and all that, and we're going to continue to do that because we want to remove as much of this as we can from circulation, but we're not going to arrest our way out of an epidemic.
No.
So it's going to take education and other programs to get a hold on this thing. We simply, there are more than 30 million Americans addicted, and we can't house 30 million people. Don't want to.
No.
And that doesn't fix them.
That's right.
So you're releasing, 20-something million of these 30 million who are still addicted, and they're right back into the. So education is the start, and then we have to build on these programs.
Well, and what we would like to see next, we're going to train the school employees, but then we want to have sessions during the day and at night for families to come, for parents to learn about this. Because you have grandparents and great-grandparents raising children. Again, this is new to us. And just talking about social media and these cell phones, they can speak in code. Kids have code. And unless you know that language, then you don't even know what they're talking about.
Right.
And so to do better, we've got to know better.
Yeah, and even not just the kids, the people that we arrest or that we deal with on a regular basis with drugs. We actually worked a case this week where a guy was in jail from some charges that we had from a pursuit that we ended up recovering some meth off of, and he was using the jail phone, calling people and speaking in code on it, and there was actually more meth in the vehicle, and we went back and recovered that this week.
Oh, wow. Wow, that amazes me, because if you don't know their code, then you don't know what they're talking about.
It's kind of, you have to read between the lines sometimes. It's they as we train ourselves, they train themselves also about
Yeah, that's right.
better ways to try to keep from getting caught.
Well, and of course, it's nothing new. You see people that they get arrested for drugs, and then maybe a few weeks later you see them right back in, arrested again. Like you said, it's an education issue because some people just don't. I don't know. I won't say that people are not willing to change, but some people seem like they don't change. They just go back to their old habits.
Well, and then we have to recognize that addiction is real.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, your education level. It's, you know, I imagine most every single family has been impacted to some degree. But we want this town, we want our community to be a great place to work and live, and
Right.
Certainly a place for our kids to be able to go to school. And so that's what this is about, just
Yes.
coming together to make it a better community.
And the addiction is the thing, and
That's
that's you know, most people don't understand the chemistry of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's easy for us to just get frustrated and say, look, you know, let's just lock them up and throw away the key. But like I said, there are 30 million addicted. We can't do that.
Right.
And that doesn't fix them, because you have to fix the addiction, which is in the brain.
Well, and then you're altering brain chemistry.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you know, back to educating kids, it's hard to learn when your brain
Exactly.
isn't well,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
You know,
there-
it's in my 30 years dealing with it, we've always concentrated on the enforcement end of it.
Sure.
And I know that the sheriff is working on trying to do some of the rehabilitation end of it so that they don't make multiple trips to jail in and out. And that's something that he sees more so than I do on a regular basis, because he runs the jail, he sees the people in the jail. And he's right. If we can't fix the people, it's just going to be reoccurring. It's just, and it's never going to stop.
And of course, the deaths are going every year higher and higher. So the latest numbers I have is 2021, and that number was up to 107,000 Americans, and that was up from 91,800 the year before, and that was up from 70,000 the year before that.
Oh,
so,
wow.
so that number just continues to grow drastically, and these are all overdose deaths, but the majority of these are fentanyl deaths.
Well, that's really sad.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, and I noticed when in the political season, I think you as well as some other candidates talked about rehab programs,
Right.
trying to build more instead of, like you said, instead of just putting them in jail, put them in somewhere where they can get rehabilitated.
Yeah, it's going to take things like that to address the addiction, because arrest and incarceration doesn't address the addiction. So if we can get programs into our jail, that's great. Maybe someone can leave there this time for the last time.
Yes.
And maybe we can even get people help before they've gone into the system. But it's going to take things like that. And, you know, some people look at that and they think of that as a, you know, maybe a soft on crime kind of approach or something. I think that's just common sense. And if anybody thinks we're soft on crime, I mean, they should
Not
just
paying
go out and
attention.
talk to the people that are replacing their front doors. So, you know, it's just that while we're going to continue to do that part, I understand the reality is that's not going to fix this issue.
Yes.
That's only a part of it. So, so we have to work. That's why we have this idea of this SAFE program, the Sequatchie's Addiction-Free Environment. It's going to take an all-inclusive effort.
Well, and two, sometimes, and I hate to say this, but sometimes it just takes maybe even a death of somebody that's really close to you, where you think, you know, you don't always think it's close to you until it gets close to you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and like with the students you have, I know sometimes you've had some that have, you know, at school they get sick or things like that, and you don't realize it till you have to deal with it, what's going on.
It's a frightening reality, is these kids hitting a dab pen or something and needing medical attention. And so then we're in the position of making sure they're well, and
Yeah.
before they can, you know, basic needs comes first. But it's It's a terrifying reality to think a kid could die on your watch.
Right.
Well, I know my oldest daughter, she's told her, my grandson, because he'd come home and she'd say, "Where'd you get that?" And says, "Oh, my friend gave it to me." He says, "It's just some gum. It's just," and she's having to tell him, says, "You do not take anything from anybody." You know, and it's kind of sad when, especially even your friends,
Yeah.
because they may have been given something that from a friend who maybe it's not necessarily the friend.
Right.
Well, and the fact is, the companies making this are marketing it to middle school age kids.
Yeah.
You know, that's their target audience. Is
Well, I mean, we have rainbow fentanyl now.
Yeah.
You know, the colorful. You know, that's to entice and attract children.
And it comes in all kinds of like gummy bear-like things and just all kind of things.
It could be in anything. I mean, it's, you know, from vapes to pill form to powder form. They can make it into edibles. I mean, it can come in anything. And it's not, I guess I can't stress enough, it's not a Dunlap and Sequatchie County issue.
Oh,
it's
no.
It's across the country issue.
Yeah.
You know, it's huge across the country.
It's just growing more and more because all of us sitting here have seen it grow from where it used to be,
Right.
and it's more dangerous than what it used to be.
It is,
Certainly.
definitely.
Absolutely.
I mean, it used to be marijuana was a big thing, you know, and and that was, but you didn't worry too much about marijuana, even though it was illegal.
Right.
But now you have to worry about a lot of other things.
Yeah. And what's in the marijuana now?
well,
Yeah.
So.
like you just talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and I said in the video that we did with the schools that there was a county not too far from here that they actually took a vape off a couple kids, and 2 SROs and 2 teachers overdosed just by touching the vape. So, I mean, it's an issue. It's an issue for teachers. It's an issue for law enforcement. It's an issue for everybody. You know, we get calls on a normal basis of going in businesses here in town where people have dropped drugs on the floor, and we tell them, don't touch them. Don't touch them.
No.
Let us come deal with them.
Yeah. 'Cause like you say, you don't know what they're laced with, and if you touch it, it can get right. I mean, right through the skin immediately.
Yes.
That's
So
just-
really, we need parents to echo this message. Like, we care about our children in this town, and we need their help. We need family support to check on their kids. Pay attention. Stay alert. What are your kids watching and doing online, and what are they ingesting? What are in the backpacks? Like, pay attention.
Right. I mean, none of us want to assume that our children are doing anything wrong or illegal.
Well,
But that's a big but.
we're in the human being business.
Yes.
And it's, you know, we love our people. We care so much about this because this is our town. And we want people to be well.
And,
Right.
and like Sarai said a minute ago, there are very few families, if any, who have
That's
not been affected in our community.
That's right.
I would agree.
And yeah, that's a shame. Like you said, it doesn't matter rich, poor,
Oh.
doesn't matter last name.
No.
That's immaterial anymore.
Doesn't matter if your family is law enforcement or a teacher
No.
or if they're at poverty level. I mean, it
That's
doesn't
right.
matter.
Right.
And I can remember when I taught 7th grade, we had a student that had the signs of meth, coming out on his skin, and his daddy was doing it at night while they were asleep.
Yeah.
And eventually they had to be taken away. There was 5 children in that family, and they had to be taken away from the family. And so that presents another problem.
Oh, yeah.
When the children have to be taken away from a family that will not get off of this, that puts them in child care and all kind of other things. It just adds to the problem.
And a lot of times separates the children from each other. You know, they try to keep them together if something like that happens, but a lot of times that's not possible.
Right, and like you said, this issue we all need to attack head on,
Yes.
and don't step back from it. Fight it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, this is not a law enforcement or a schools issue. This is a community issue.
Yes.
And we're going to work with the community and do what we can, and the schools are doing a great job working with us, and the partnerships have just been phenomenal. But it's going to take the community to really make progress with this.
Well, and also like a lot of other things, when like if you talk about people that are like in church, for example, and they they go and mess up and do something, you don't beat them over the head and tell them how bad they are. You try to bring them back in because you love them.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing with this. I mean,
Exactly.
yes, they're wrong, and this
Yeah.
could potentially hurt a lot of people, but you're not going to throw them out in the streets. You're going to say, look, we want to help you. Let us work with you.
Yes.
There are a lot of good people doing drugs today.
That's a good point.
So
And if you go on the school's website, and probably your all's too, we have resources for addiction. And please know that that isn't limited to grown adults. I mean, we're having kids who are starting to vape in middle school who tell us that they're addicted and they want to stop and they don't know how by the time they're in high school. And so if you will look at sequatchieschools.net, there are resources listed there, and we want to help our people.
And I'm sure all three of you would want somebody to come to you, even if they had to be in private, just say, hey, I have a problem, I need help.
yeah,
We always, in law enforcement, and we have issues with that from time to time, but we always want people to run to us instead of away from us.
Ooh.
You know?
that's one big thing with this SAFE program is a part of it is how do we build that trust with the community? Because most people feel like I can't go to the police and tell them I'm addicted to drugs or they're going to put me in jail. Well, number one, you can't charge somebody with being addicted. But that's not what we want to do. We want to get them help. And sometimes jail is not the help they need.
Right.
So,
From the school lens, hardship that we face is we have very clear parameters of what you can and cannot do while you're at school. And so if a kid is disciplined or caught with contraband that they shouldn't be used or under the influence, and we call the families, and in fact it's the parents who are providing it, you know, that's a hard reality. And so in that situation, my approach is, you know, I can't control what families
Right.
approve in their home, but we are in charge of what happens at our schools. So that's the line.
Yeah, and we do have, we have some businesses here in town that are selling to juveniles. And we know that, and we're in the process of trying to correct that issue. So
Good.
that's coming down the line.
Well, and that needs to be, because it's more than just a buck. Yeah.
It
That's
is.
right.
Most
Talking
definitely.
about livelihoods.
Yes.
And it's not all of them. Don't keep that
Right.
in mind. It's not all of them. It's a select few. So, and we know who they are.
I like it.
Well, is anything we've left out? I know we've talked about a lot of things, but is there anything y'all need to bring out that we haven't talked about?
just you're going to really see a push on this effort to get out this idea of this SAFE program. I really think that the education and getting that trust built, like I just mentioned, I think that's going to be key to really making progress with what we're dealing with. So we're going to be asking that the community come out and get involved in this. I mean, we're talking about doing maybe like cornhole tournaments at the various community centers, or just different things like that. And we're going to be asking that the community really get involved in this. We're already getting a lot of people that are calling going, hey, how can I get involved? So this epidemic is getting people's attention. And they're going to see more things coming really soon in our efforts to try to make this better.
Well, I know in your first initial meeting you had at the jail, you had what, about 50 or so people?
We did, and that was just the people in positions that are dealing with this professionally, like law enforcement, of course, the schools, probation and parole, DCS, DHS, all these organizations that are dealing with these people. And my point there was, I think a lot of us are still trying to deal with this, not understanding what we're dealing with. So we need to address that, and so we can make better decisions on the front end. And then our next meeting coming up will be opened to the public. So that's where we're hoping to really drive the support and get this thing off the ground, and hopefully start making some progress.
Well, I know that day you had a couple of inmates that were about ready to get out, and they really did their testimony basically,
Yeah.
Wow.
and said they couldn't hang around here. They needed to get out
Yeah.
away from their environment.
Yeah, these guys were able to speak firsthand on addiction, and one guy had been sitting in our jail for I think 4 years.
Wow.
And you know, he's been there even before that. He was in jail, and it's always because of his addiction. And so I think having those two guys being able to get up and just talk to all these people, not having to deal with them in their professional capacity, was a big plus, I thought.
Well, and I think sometimes when you use like the inmates to give their testimony, that may mean more than coming from y'all.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And to reiterate what he said, most of the people in the jail are not bad people.
Yeah.
You know, they've fallen on bad times. They have addiction problems. You know, most of them it's just things they can't get around, they can't get over, and that's where hopefully the His Safe program will help things along.
And you know, for all the struggles, I want to be clear too of how many families are incredibly supportive and really, really want the best for their kids. And there's so many who daily work with us and want to come along and be a partner, and they want their children to succeed. And I'm so thankful for those folks.
Yep.
I'm so thankful that I can pick up the phone, and if we have an issue, that family's said, yeah, we're beside you. We're going to help you.
Well, and it's important to understand that the percentages may have changed a little bit from when I was in school, but it was only about really 5% of the population that was really the troublemakers and the ones who got in trouble. It wasn't a big percentage of the whole population.
I'll tell you what makes a difference is if we make a phone call and the receiving end is supportive and they have expectations for their child at home, that's really the corrective action we need.
Right.
It
Yes.
really starts in the homes.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I appreciate y'all coming
Thank you.
today and being with us, because we want to get this message out, because it is important. It's nothing to be playing with, and maybe we'll see you more in some of the community events, you know, Valley Fest and things like that, where people can get out and talk to you and see you, or other things. I just mentioned Valley Fest because it's coming up, but there's other
Right.
things.
Yeah.
You may not want to be in Valley Fest, maybe.
We'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
And we want people to come up and discuss
Yeah,
these
sure.
things. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because it used to be, I like you said earlier, people didn't want to talk to the police, afraid they're going to get arrested, afraid that, you know, but that's not the point of being arrested. You want to get them help
Right.
so that they're not arrested.
And then
That's right.
most people, and Bill can probably adhere to this. Most people, if I see them in Walmart afterwards, after I've arrested them, they thank us for what we did. You know, hey, if you hadn't done what you done, I may be dead right now. You know, and we appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
nice to hear, you know,
Yes.
whenever they do actually make it beyond that.
Well, it's the same thing like seeing a former student. Yeah, after you've had them, you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to see that student or not. And then they come up and say, hey, it wasn't for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand that. Well, listen, I do appreciate y'all
Thank
being
you.
here, because like I said, we want to get this message out. I know y'all are trying to do your best and going to do to great lengths to get it out. And if anybody can help, contact these people right here. Call them. They'll talk with you. Don't worry about if they're doing something. They'll stop what they're doing to help you. I appreciate it. So until next time, have a great day. Thank you. Hey everybody, this is Glenn Edison from Valley Views. We appreciate you watching our shows, and we would like for you to like, share, and follow us on Facebook, as well as like and subscribe to our YouTube page.